Chiefs fans, your franchise is changing, and we're going to go over why, how, and when it's going to come around. Big update for Orlando Brown. We have that covered. This is Chief in the North, and I know I don't look like Seth Kaiser, but, you know, you got to do what you got to do. We're going to get into it one way or the other. Welcome to RGR Football. Well, eventually there will be and floating on past the camera is the Chief in the North himself. Welcome, everyone. This is RGR Football. If you're new to us, I'm Ryan Tracy. That's Seth Kaiser, and that is Dan Harms on the other side. This is something we don't do all the time, but I'm kind of digging it. We're going to leave you in the middle, Seth. You're just going to have to deal with it. So, the ringleader is the ringleader.
That's me. I like to think of myself as a place where I can be a bad influence on everyone. I
like that, be the center of normality or locus of magnality. That's what I'm thinking of. Folks, if you don't know us, the Athletic, Football Astronauts, obviously we're all part of RGR Football. You can find me on Locked On. You can find me on NFL 33. We got all kinds of stuff in the works here. So, hey, welcome. This is Chief of the North Live. We'll get to some of your questions later. We're going to have a roundtable discussion tonight about where this team is. So, if you don't know us, like this video, sub to this channel, click that bell so you know what happens, because that's integral. Half the time I don't know what's going on unless I see the little notification. So luckily I'm mostly on time tonight. You never know, but we have a lot. We will have our moderators are in the house. Liz is here. I know. I saw her. Stevie is in the house as well. I will not be surprised if a bunch of our regulars and a bunch of our contributors show up.
Sounds like someone's moderating Dan.
Star. Right?
Yeah, she is. She is all involved.
Hi.
She's like, oh, there's a new guy. I don't like this, Dad.
Yeah, I know. You know what? That's what my kids do too. Hey, can you do this?
Yes, you can sit on my lap.
It's actually his show, Avery. So
hey.
And a surprise appearance. The Queen of Cheese Kingdom. Hi.
Yeah. We'll finally get some good content on this show.
Right?
I know, right?
Yeah,
some honest opinion.
Some good content.
Yeah, right. That's the way that it goes.
What do you got there?
Folks,
is that
a dinosaur? This is a family show. It's a Christmas tree on a dinosaur and a truck.
Boop him.
And this Avery is
oh, hey.
It's that
little salamander guy.
Yep, from Frozen 2.
That is so cool. Does he actually shoot fire?
Hi.
I'm saying hi to you.
She can't hear us, Seth.
This is so wholesome. Oh yeah, I suppose she can't hear us.
That's okay.
So I'm just randomly saying things. Hi. That's so
it's
much
tough.
fun.
What do they say in Hollywood? Never compete with animals or kids because you just can't win.
Well, yeah, and I've got the attention
about
span
this
of a
channel.
Squirrel anyway, so I'm just like, hey,
It happens. It happens.
But no, I'm excited. We never do this. All three of us, one place, one time. I'm excited. And there's like something resembling Chiefs news today.
At least, right?
I know, right?
It's Chiefs news adjacent.
And I really see this as like the first domino that falls. So tell us what happened, Seth, and what do you take from it?
Sure. So Mike Garofalo initially reported, and it got picked up and confirmed, that Chiefs left tackle Orlando Brown, I'm just reading the tweet. Now, you should follow Mike. He's good people. Has signed with an agent, Michael Portner of DSG Athletes, as he and the team work towards a long-term contract before the July 15th deadline. July 15th, that's the franchise tag deadline, all that fun stuff to get a contract signed. That's not in the tweet. Brown and Portner found common ground on a personal level, as detailed in the press release below. Then there's a press release. I'm not going to detail the whole thing. It sounds like him and Brown got along personally. Here's an interesting tweet that came after from Mike again. Another factor in Brown signing with Portner, I'm told, is he wanted an agent who didn't have prior relationships or friendships with any GMs. Portner will be negotiating his first NFL contract, and Brown looked at that as a positive. I have thoughts on this, And I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are on this. But the first thing I will say before one of you guys wants to kick in on something, I'm in the middle now, so I'm the captain. This explains at least partly why it took so long for him to get an agent, because it's easy to find an agent in the NFL if you want an agent that already represents NFL players, because you go to Patrick Mahomes, you go to Travis Kelce, you go to whoever, you say, hey, do you like your agent? He's doing all right. And then you hire that guy.
Right. Finding
a guy who has never done this before, this is obviously something they want to get they want to dip their feet into. But I mean, this DSG group's like, this guy is like, he's the founding member. It's his company. It's kind of like, I forgive me for saying this, Mr. Portner, but you are DSG groups in the same sense that the Chief of the North newsletter is a giant corporation. No, it's not. It's me. It is me. Right here. Look, it's the Chief of the North group. I mean, so I appreciate why he's doing that, and that's important stuff to do. And what he's doing is a much bigger deal than what I'm doing. But I thought that was really funny. It's like founding member, and agent's like, come on, man.
Why, thank you.
Tell us the truth. You know,
I have thoughts about what it means and what it goes to, but Dan, I don't want to cut you off. How do you take it, and how happy are you? What's your read?
I'm glad they're finally going to get on some ground here, finally start working towards that contract. They have a little over a month now to figure out the contract extension for him, so I'm confident they're going to get it done. I'm interested because the dynamic of someone who's never worked an NFL contract before, that tells me, at least from a novice's perspective, that they're probably not going to get the top dollar that he wants, because experience allows you to get the most out of the team, and in terms of finding that middle ground that you're both working toward, and knowing the ways around how the specific language of contracts allows you to also put other things that guarantee you money into these contracts. So at least from an optimistic fan perspective who doesn't know much about the contract process, this would lead me to believe that there's a better chance of them signing him now to a smaller, when I say smaller, we're still probably talking $20-ish million a year, but not the top that he was reported to have said. So there's some optimism there that you can squeeze him in for a smaller, probably top 10 tackled money, and I'm totally okay with that.
I'm with you there, and I'll say this, just for future reference, folks. My agent, when I do get signed and have to do some kind of contract negotiating, will be one Seth Keyser Esquire. And he will be in the same situation, having never negotiated a contract before. There are a couple of things there. On the positive side, you get outside the box thinking. On the negative side, you get what Dan said, is that chutzpah, that gravitas, right? There's a reason that Chris Cabot runs Lee Steinberg's outfit now. It's still Lee Steinberg at the top of the marquee, right? Because he has that kind of negotiating power. He has that kind of recognition. And quite frankly, when you have a backlog of athletes, teams understand that, okay, if I screw you on this negotiation, you're going to come back at me on the next one even harder. When you're a single client agent, it makes things a little bit more difficult. But
it does.
Talk to me legalese, man. Get into the dirt. Let's go.
I like the direction you were going with the but, and I have a feeling we might be going the same direction. So, you know, Ryan, you and I often talk about our, I guess, day jobs, we'd call them. We tend to operate in a white collar field, each of us. Mm-hmm. And those fields are interesting for a variety of reasons. Sports agency, it's essentially legal representation. And so it's adjacent to what I do, but not really. There are agents that are lawyers, and I think that's a good idea. And if you're not a lawyer, it's tough. The contract drafting stuff, it can be done, but you need to know a lawyer if you're not a lawyer, and you're going to be a sports agent. And it's not that hard to know a lawyer. So there you go. Here's my experience with first-time attorneys or attorneys that only have one client, is that they generally don't get squeezed, is they generally make really unreasonable demands. I'm curious because he doesn't have any clients that can get hosed, if he plays hardball. There was a defense attorney who once said to me, he was representing something that his client has done. He said, no, my client really did do this. It was like a good thing. It was like completing a chemical use assessment or something. He said, I don't have the paperwork yet, but I'm telling you, he did do this. And I said to this guy, we'll call him John, this lawyer. I said, look, John, I trust you. You know, we've worked together a while, which matters. Trust is a big deal. Mm-hmm. And what he said to me, and he goes, well, yeah. And this is a guy who did a lot of defense attorneying in the jurisdiction I prosecuted. He said, well, yeah, also, you know, Seth, there's no one client who's worth enough to me to ruin my name with the prosecutor, because he had 30 other clients. And let me just say, I mean, this is a pretty common thing. You can talk to Austin too, or Bird Law, you know, really most defense attorneys that are always working with prosecutors, they generally speaking, not all of them, but most of them have a pretty good working relationship, because what you see on TV of, you know, these two sides fighting it out constantly, that doesn't work. No one has the time or energy, specifically the court. Judges hate that crap. So she's just poking you. That's awesome. Whereas because you have to worry about that coming back on your other 20 clients. If I've got someone, and I try to be fair as a prosecutor, but the reality is we're all humans, and as fair as we try to be, if I hate your lawyer and I think he's a schmuck, it's hard to not have that affect how I prosecute the case. Yep. Maybe I'm less inclined to give you a break. And that's not necessarily how it should be, but that's just the reality of being human and whether or not I'm willing to listen to someone. There are some attorneys where when they say to me, hey, Seth, you have a stop issue on this DWI, I listen, because I know they wouldn't tell me that unless it were true. There are other attorneys who say that to me, and I'm like, yeah, I don't care. You're probably wrong.
Right.
If he doesn't have to worry about that, he can go to them, say, this is the offer, take it or leave it, and it has no blowback on any of his clients because he has no other clients. He's also trying to make a name for himself in an industry where differentiating yourself is incredibly tough, and breaking into it is borderline impossible. So I hope Dan is right. Like, Dan, I really hope you're right. And this means the Chiefs can squeeze him a little bit. In my experience dealing with new young attorneys without enough clients and with too much time on their hands, it's often the opposite. And so we'll see. And I'm curious, Ryan, if that's your experience with people with not enough to do who are trying to make a name for themselves.
It's funny that you bring it up, because I was going that direction, because I think you're both right. I think people without the experience and without the personal relationships, they do set higher demands than probably is reasonable. I do that in every business deal I do as well, because if you don't ask for it, you ain't never going to get it, right?
Yeah.
But in the end, when you don't have the experience and you let them nickel and dime you, I think you do end up taking probably a below average deal in the end, because you just don't know the ins and outs. It's difficult to compete at that level when you're new in the pond. But I will say this. I think this is a much better alternative to what I thought was going to happen. And bear with me, folks. I'm going to connect a few dots here. And this is not personal information. I don't know either of these guys or any of their agents, but I will tell you this. It is not beyond me that
Should I make a flow chart while you talk?
If you would, this would really help. Just put all the question marks in my bubbles. But for me, knowing that Orlando came from Baltimore, where the star of that franchise has chosen to represent himself in the past, I do think that is not only enticing to some players, because it does feel like you have a bit more control over your own life and over the deal that you make, but also there are some financial gains that you can make there, at least perceivably, if you can negotiate in a way that actually is advantageous. It feels like this delay has been a lot of decision-making on Orlando's part. Do I want to go down Lamar Jackson's path and represent myself? And in the end, I think someone advised him well that, no, you need someone to be in your corner. You need someone to take the reins, and talking with Brett Veach, because in the end of the day, it comes down to looking at Brett Veach in the eye and saying, I want this much money and I want this many years, and I ain't signing for less. And that puts a strain on personal relationships within the building if you are the player doing that. I think that's affected Lamar Jackson myself and where he is with his franchise. So I'm glad to see it. Now, that may all be complete nonsense, and I just connected a bunch of dots that aren't really there. But that's just where I see. Well done.
That's impressive.
Dang. I never knew I had needed a stenographer, but here we are.
It's all that lawyering, note-taking ability. He's just like,
no one can write illegibly like I can.
But you're quick too. That's a skill.
Oh yeah, got to be quick. That is a really good point. Self-representation. One reason that can be messy is negotiations are brutal, and that's by definition. I mean, that's just how it goes. I'm not sure if the Patrick Mahomes negotiations were brutal. I think that really felt more like everyone got in a room and said, okay, we want to make this a historic contract. What are some ways we can do that? Like that felt like a brainstorming session turned into, which I wrote about, by the way. We actually should talk about that. I wasn't even trying to segue into that, but I wrote about that contract.
Well done, though.
Very impressive.
And so, yes, thank you. Yes. Yes, subscribe. You should. Coming up on the 2-year anniversary this month, 2 years, Chief of the North newsletter. I'll probably, the Thursday after we do that, I'll probably do some kind of celebration giveaway or something. I don't know.
There you go.
Maybe a bit of confetti.
Maybe a bit of Super Bowl confetti. I mean, I just don't know. I don't know. Where in the world would someone have Super Bowl confetti that fell onto the field at Hard Rock Cafe Stadium as the Chiefs celebrated? Where would a guy get that? What's this? Danny Welniak at KCTV5. That's where you get it. Awesome person. Anyway, so with negotiations generally, though, being kind of brutal, and Lamar Jackson's not in the same boat Patrick Mahomes is in. Maybe if he'd been negotiating this contract 2 years ago, because he did win a league MVP. He did have an historic season, and both of his years since then have been a little less impressive. Now, he's still a very, very good quarterback, but he's no longer like it was like, oh, Mahomes or Jackson, some people said and debated. I never thought it was that close, but he does have an incredibly unique skill set. I think he's a better thrower than he gets credit for in some circles. I don't think he's as good a thrower as he gets credit for in other circles.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's kind of in between there. But he's a very good quarterback and a very unique one. But that doesn't make you Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen or maybe even Joe Burrow. I'm not completely sold on Joe Burrow. We can talk about that another time. Curious what Lamar Jackson would look like if you could just throw it up to Jamar Chase. Be like, yeah, Jamar down there somewhere. Oh, look at that. He caught a 50-50 ball and scored a 70-yard touchdown. Look at me, you know.
Dude, I am so down to have that conversation. We are going to do that.
Yeah. And so what happens in negotiations, though, is teams point out stuff like that in most negotiations. Even in like Josh Allen's, when his representation went in there, he may well have heard, but you, sir, are not Patrick Mahomes. He may have heard that. And that especially is true when you're not kind of the undisputed number one dude. You're always going to hear that because teams have a job to do. It is in their best interest financially to get the best deal possible for the team. And that, you know, there's a pie and you can only split so much of it. And the pie can only grow so large. You know, it's not like because of the salary cap, there are limitations on what you can do that can benefit both parties. So I'm curious if that's affecting Lamar Jackson with their negotiations, because that definitely has not gone smoothly so far.
No. And my big takeaway on the day is that I'm happy that it's not going to be that.
Absolutely.
So Dan, the question becomes to you, how quickly can they get this done? And do you think this comes down to wire? Because A, the agent's new, and because A, the agent doesn't have a relationship currently with Brett Veach.
Yeah, I think this is going to come into July. I think in the first week of July is probably when we'll see it done. You're going to have some process right now figuring out what both sides wants, what Orlando Brown and his new agent want. They're going to have to find ways to get together to talk about that process, what they're looking for, what the Chiefs want, and they're going to have this time away to figure that out. So I think that probably is going to take about a month. We don't really know approximation. I think that's a reasonable time to get to know a player and his new agent, his new representation. It's a good enough time to figure out the common ground. And then in that first week of July is when I expect that contract to be done, or early in that second week.
I hope so.
I'm curious how they handle it. Gooch, quit whining.
Yeah,
and sometimes you have to talk about the rest of the NFL to talk about the Chiefs, my friend. Other teams sign contracts too. Anyway, what's the wedding singer line? Well, I have a microphone and you don't. So you will listen to every word I have to say. Anyway,
Folks, Gooch has his own microphone. You'll be able to see him tomorrow on
yes.
Gooch Late Night. That will be up for the members tomorrow. Make sure that you grab a membership. I think it's draft level. No, it's rookie level. Rookie level and up, you get them. Gooch will have his own opinions tomorrow with his microphone. But Gooch, yes, we're trying to make that segue. Lamar to Orlando. That's why.
He won't even.
I know you got here late.
Won't even. Not only will he not mention Lamar or Burrow during his time, he won't even use any of the letters in their names while he talks. He's gonna do a whole podcast without using the letter L. I'm sorry, I'm being a schmuck, and I don't know why. Good to see you, Gooch. I always appreciate seeing you. So anyway, I completely sidetracked myself. So one thing I would consider doing if I were the Chiefs, he's been searching for an agent. The Chiefs, in the meantime, they know already. They have already got their financial guys in place. They already know they had an offer made to Trent Williams last year or the year before last. No, last year.
Yeah, last year.
They had an offer in place. Now, Orlando Brown is not Trent Williams, but that's not how contracts work at the NFL level all the time. Although I would argue Trent Williams might have a little bit of the Aaron Donald effect to where if his name gets brought up in negotiations, I think the team can, without alienating anyone, say, Trent Williams does get paid that.
Yeah, exactly.
Should we turn on the tape? Trent Williams, the difference between Trent Williams and the second best left tackle is bigger than any other gap in the league, except maybe Donald and the next defensive tackle. And so
and by the way, did you see what Cullen said today? Folks, we're going to get to your questions coming up. Don't worry. We're still planning on that. Coach Cullen came out today and said that, hey, if we do this right, and Chris is playing the way Chris could play, he's the best D tackle in the league. Aaron's not retired yet, folks. That is a brazen statement from the newest D-line coach in Kansas City.
For me, this is all about him trying to get his guys hyped up. Like, that's what this is.
Agree.
This is him. He just said that Chris Jones and Frank Clark are going to have career years with him, with his tutelage, by the way.
Right.
Not because of them. His tutelage is the reason that they're going to have that. So while I'm here for it, don't get me wrong, I'm here for Chris Jones and Frank Clark having career years. That would mean that everything that we've seen about the defensive line not getting the investment that they truly need is all worries beyond the wayside. We don't have to worry about that. I would be here for it. So I'm just waiting to see what he can bring out. That's the one thing that I've been waiting for, because I don't know much about him. I don't know much about his his coaching techniques. There's guys on this roster: Tershawn Wharton, Colin Saunders, and I forget the new guy they brought in from Indianapolis. I always forget his name, but he's a backup defensive tackle as well. Yeah, Stallworth.
Oh, yeah.
There's guys here that you can get more out of. Is Mike Dana going to take a step forward with him too? Is his tutelage going to make Colin Saunders a viable rotational player? These are all things we have to understand, because they need so much more on the defensive tackle in terms of pressure. Colin Saunders was that guy coming out. He turned into a run-first guy, and then all of a sudden he was just inactive. We need to see him take a step. He needs to be a productive member of this rotation for them to be successful and get interior pressure, period.
And I completely agree with that. I don't remember how we got there. Oh, I mentioned Aaron Donald. Then we took a long road.
It's your fault.
And I know it's always my fault. I'm okay with that. I accept that. So here's what I was going to say with regards to Orlando Brown. The Chiefs have done this before. Mm-hmm. They've done it with Eric Fisher. Remember, Eric Fisher's contract was like a top 5 or 6-ish contract at the left tackle position. And people lost their minds. By the end of it, what was it? A good deal. Isn't that interesting how that works? So I'm just readying people for when Orlando Brown signs a deal, if he does, that's $22 million a year.
Yeah,
because it would not shock me at all. The Chiefs, they knew what they were willing to offer Trent Williams last year. I don't think that's what they're going to offer Orlando Brown. They have the framework in place for what they gave Eric Fisher. You're going to find some smorgasbord of those two things. And if I were them, but now again, this is the way I prosecute. Everyone does things differently. Positional bargaining is the way a lot of people do things, where, I'm going to start off by offering him $1 and he will start off by asking for $100 billion. And after everyone's pissed, we will meet in the middle, which is just, it makes me crazy. I don't do it. And so what I always do when I get a new defense attorney, I send them an offer right away that I think is a fair offer. Say, this is what I think based on what I'm seeing in the case. And they'll leave me back. And if they try to do a positional bargain thing, I just said, no. I think what I sent was a fair offer. I'm not going to move off it unless you give me a really good reason to, but I'm willing to listen. If I were the Chiefs, you've got a chance here to let the new guy kind of shine a little bit, say, look how fast I got this done and a good deal for my client. Offer something fair out of the gate, probably lower than what you're willing to pay, but you don't need to positional bargain the daylights out of it. Don't offer him $15 million a year. If that's one thing I would do, I think they're able to make an offer very quickly. No one wants to be the one to make the offer, so they might have that ridiculous Michael Scott thing. It's like, I'm declining to speak first. I hope they don't. I hope they've learned from how things kind of went down with some other contract negotiations with stars. Now, that was in, the Eric Berry, Justin Houston type era, different front office in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But I think the Chiefs, they really could get an offer out there today because they've got the framework in place.
I hope so. I would love to see it be quicker than not. And like you said, if it's fair to begin with, maybe that negotiation can be quicker because he doesn't necessarily need OTAs, but I think the offensive line as a group needs him at OTAs to become the line that they're going to become, because at the end of the day, they are 5 guys, sometimes 6, working in unison. And despite everybody knowing him, I don't think it's a coincidence that Kennard's getting some left tackle reps, by the way, folks. And if you guys haven't been following me, I'm not going to tell you which team he's getting reps with, but he is getting reps at left tackle. It's not a coincidence. You want to solidify that 5, 6, maybe 7. If you got one swing tackle, one swing interior guy, you want to get those guys locked in. And that's the kind of thing that I think OTAs can really help the offensive line with. You're not breaking new trails here, but you're solidifying. And I think that is important. So before we go too far down the offensive lines, I know you guys have a bunch of super chats and a bunch of questions. We're going to get to them here in a minute. But I just want, Dan, first, your first reaction to anything non-Cullen that was said today by the Chiefs assistants or Andy himself, anything that stood out that maybe we didn't bring up yet.
I mean, we can always just kind of segue into the Tyreek situation. That was fun. If you guys didn't see Andy Reid completely shut that question down, that was a lot of fun to listen to him just go off on one of the guys asking the questions, because it was a dumb question as much as people want to say it needed to be asked. We all know Andy Reid was going to be like, get that out of here. Like, just go away. We don't want any of that stuff in this at all. But I also like the dynamic of bringing back Matt Nagy, people asking about the dynamic between Andy Reid, Matt Nagy, and EB, because that's going to be talked about, especially because we all assume at the end of this year, either EB is getting a head coaching job somewhere or he's going to the college level, in my opinion. I don't think he's going to stay in Kansas City past this year. I don't see it myself. And that's why Andy Reid was like, hey, Matt, I see you just got fired. Let me bring you in. Let me see if you can become the OC next year, because we all know that the offense was probably the best that we've seen it with Matt Nagy as the offensive coordinator, calling plays up and being as creative as it has been, but that didn't work out in Chicago. So
creative with Mahomes is a different thing, though, because I think it goes farther. And Seth, I want to get your impression, because for me, people got pissed off at me for taking EB's side. How dare I say that LaShawn might just be salty about getting old?
Oh,
yeah. But Seth, where do you land on those two guys? And for me, what does that lead into for EB?
Anytime someone says some version of, other dudes might be okay being talked to that way, but I'm a grown man type thing. And I don't know, maybe EB does seem like a yeller. He does kind of, holler and stuff. I guess I just don't care. Look, I got hollered at today by a judge. Yeah. And LaShawn, I'm a 37-year-old attorney, and I got yelled at today. And you know what I did? I shrugged.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
And that's, so maybe I'm way off base. Maybe it really was disrespectful, because some of the stuff, like the stuff that went down in Jacksonville last year, that's not cool.
That's different.
There's a line between, you actually got to treat people like men. But I mean, sports is a bit of a different world. There's going to be a little more yelling. It's not like after I won a motion hearing today. It's like my boss came in and was like, yeah, and cracked me over the head. I mean, that would have scared me. I'm like, Jonathan, what are you doing? But
come on, bro.
But you sports do work a little different. You're going to get a little more young. Going to be like, hey, pick that ball up. Don't fumble my football, blah, blah. Some coaches talk like that, and you can just deal with it. I don't know. That whole thing seems so silly to me. That's kind of where I land on that, honestly. It just seems so silly. It's like, man, he seems a little sour. We've got a couple running backs that seemed a little sour after their time in KC, guys that were a little longer in the tooth, which I do think is interesting, if nothing else.
Maybe a little loose with the football, if we're being honest. I think EB said, hey, stop fumbling football, you're going to lose your job. I'm willing to bet that was the exchange in some way, shape, or form, and he didn't like it. I'm willing to bet that's what happened. And EB doesn't. I don't have any care. I want EB to say that. Stop fumbling the ball.
Yeah. Accountability goes whether you're a rookie or whether you're a 15-year vet. Right. You have to be accountable in this league. There's no way around it. And I agree with you. I think that was said. And I'll tell you this. I'd rather it be that way because at the end of the day, the running game is more important than the running back. And I will never change my mind on that. You'll never be able to convince me because there's always another back that's got something that can come in and carry the rock. And if he holds on to it, you're in business. So we're not going to belabor that point. This is not a LaShawn McCoy bashing session.
No.
But we needed to address it. We're going to get to your questions here coming up. First, if you would, make sure that you go sub to Seth's Substack because that's where you get his real work. This is just fun and games. We just make him come on here just so we can say we had a lawyer on the show. But he does his real work here at the Minnesota Chiefs fan, Substack.com. And I'm going to try to shorten that, Seth. I'm telling you, we have to get that shortened because this is the other Substack that you can read my work on and Dan's work on. And look at that. It's so pretty. It's 5 letters and a .com. It's super simple. Just saying. But folks, go subscribe to both of them, please. It's great. It's great fun. We're having fun with it. Sorry, I had to get that in there.
That was awesome.
Stevie Keys, you guys, you should see Stevie this week. I hope there's an RHH coming for me. That's Roguehead Huddle. You can see that on Fridays most of the time. If not every other week, something like that. We're all on summer schedules. We're going to get there. But Stevie said, all you got to do is watch Jerry Maguire a few times. And that's, I mean.
Jerry Maguire was a bad agent.
Yes. It was
a great movie. It was a bad,
exactly.
bad example of how to do business.
I would also say, man, one of my favorite pieces of content ever made was when Therese, rest in peace, and Charles Robinson did one of their movie reviews on Jerry Maguire. I've listened to that twice.
It was great.
Because it is so great. As they're listening and they're talking about Jerry Maguire and he gets this low ball offer, like, where's Jerry's guy? Where's his guy in the media? Why isn't he telling them this? Why isn't he leaking this? He had 1,400 yards receiving. And Therese just went on. Just went on a rant about it. And it's one of my very favorite pieces of content ever made.
I completely agree with you.
Bad agent.
And Charles, if you ever watch this, and I've said this before, as I understand, there's video of it somewhere.
Yeah.
So it's never been released. So Charles, put the thing out. Will you please? Come on. Thank you, Stevie. Hot and spicy. Do you guys think that Willie Gay can be a top 5 LB this year? How we measuring that?
That's a tough one, man. That's a tough one.
There's some great linebackers in the NFL for starters. For one reason or another, Willie Gay Jr., I mean, he didn't even earn, over the course of 2 years, he hasn't earned the same amount of trust that Nick Bolton did in one.
Right.
Now, I don't know if that's fair or not, but it is accurate, like in terms of assignments. And for one reason or another, despite the fact that Willie Gay Jr. is one of the most athletic linebackers in the NFL, make no mistake. And then when you factor in, let's say linebackers above 235, then it's like him and like one or two other dudes even in the conversation.
A guy named Edmonds. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because I mean, he's a freak athlete. He's unbelievable. Like people talking about Leo Chanel, which is great, and I get that. But compare their two college film. Willie Gay can fly, or just watch Willie Gay, watch his pro film. He can fly all over the field. For one reason or another, he has not been given a full-time role. And so it's going to be impossible for him to really seize anything as long as that continues. And I guess we give the coaching the benefit of a doubt. That's just such a tall order because last year he wasn't a top, I mean, when he was on the field, I would say he was a well above average starter, but he wasn't a star. And so that would be a massive jump forward.
Yeah, for me, it's the mental side. Spags clearly felt last year that Dan Sorensen was the guy. out there, was the smartest player who could do everything that he needed him to do. But the physical limitations that we've seen over the past 3 years disintegrate his ability to do things in coverage, didn't trump that. So Willie Gay has everything you want physically to be able to do. For me, what it comes down to, they need this blind trust and faith in the player to be able to mentally execute. That's why Ben Neiman was getting so many reps. They had faith that he would mentally execute, even if his body couldn't get him there. That they need them to be able to know exactly where they're supposed to be in every single facet of the game. And as much as he's been, and I think he's proved himself over the last couple of years, he's still basically played 2 years of football in the last 5. He played 5 years of college, 5 games in college. That was it.
Yeah.
Like that was it. It's a lot.
And that's part of the mental
overcome.
processing. That's why the faith isn't there.
It takes a long time. So yeah, he's not just going to take a mental leap this year and become a top 5 guy. I think we might see him finally become more of an every down linebacker. And I think that is really the key component in him getting to that point, because if he doesn't get enough snaps, he's never going to get there.
Right.
I agree. For me, the threshold is 800 snaps. He gets there. He's not going to be a tackle leader because that's going to be Nick Bolton. I guarantee you. That's not a problem. But I will tell you this, folks. There's 2 categories that I could see him, if he gets 800 snaps this season, being a top 5 linebacker. And that is PBUs and TFLs.
Oh, yeah.
Because he will be able to play on the outside. He will be the chase linebacker. He will be able to get to the ball carrier behind the line of scrimmage.
Thank you, Leo Chanel and Brett Beach.
Exactly.
Right.
Thank you.
They found a Sam who's a legitimate Sam, has a legitimate skill set for it, and can run sideline to sideline. That's hard.
Chanel upgraded 2 positions at this linebacker
at the same time. Yep.
That's so great. Now, I do still think, and we don't have to go over right now. I know we got a million questions. I don't like the overlap between Cook and Chanel in terms of what they do personnel-wise.
I understand.
You know, I've heard there's a personnel grouping where you can have 3 linebackers on the field and 3 safeties. I think it's called 3-3-5. And I know Ryan's a fan.
Never.
Yeah, you're not going to do it.
In junior high.
3-3-5 is more what?
You could still run 3-3 in the back, but you cannot play the modern NFL with 3 down linemen. It is impossible.
So it's not impossible. It's impossible with Steve Spagnuolo as your defensive coordinator.
Yes.
Okay. Name me if it is,
or without Vince Wilfork in the
one
middle.
Team who runs a 3-man front successfully all year long.
The Rams did it for like 2 years ago. They were running basically a 3 minutes, but they had the guy in the middle that could 2-gap. Like when you don't have 2-gappers,
they did not run 3-man fronts. They meant 3 down linemen. That's the difference. Seth wants to play this game at 3-man front. That's
you can throw. You
Leo,
know, he'll be a glorified edge.
It's all technicalities.
He'll line up wide 9. It'll be great.
It's just
technicalities. You're killing me, Smalls.
It's 3 linemen,
Lord.
and then everyone else is just off a little bit. That's all the difference is.
Okay. All right. We're done. Sorry, folks. We didn't mean to go that far down the rabbit hole. You can watch us argue some other day.
Any defensive scheming that has Aaron Donald as part of the center of it is kind of tough to imitate. I acknowledge that. All they need to do is find the next Vince Wilfork, and they'd be able to do it no problem.
Sebastian Joseph Day was the guy that held it together for them.
Yeah. Dan Hampton's growing trees. It's fine.
Yeah.
Brian Acker, good day. Who is this Watson keep bringing up? Hoping Mike Rose makes the roster. Oh, and Ryan Top Gun is so worth it. Great mix of old and new storylines. Okay, rock on. I'm glad to see that. My wife super wants to see it. So Watson is Justin Watson, who came over from the Tampa Bay Bucks.
Oh, yeah.
He played 1 game last year, played on special teams. He's had 35 targets in the last 3 years. He's not the second Messiah, folks. I'm just telling you.
I was trying to get out in front of this. Like, this was the same thing in camp with the Buccaneers and Tom Brady. Justin Watson was the rave, the talk of OTAs, the talk of camp. He is a camp body. He's a guy that does great work against air.
And it's just worth noting there are a lot of guys that do well in non-contact, no pads stuff, even against defenses, because it's just different what corners are allowed to do. Being able to run through contact or get free releases is a skill. And I think there's got to be someone out there that does some kind of, if only someone could test for such things, they could call it like a matrix.
They could.
They
What
could,
an
right?
idea.
And I don't know if Watson's ever shown that. And so like a guy like Sky Moore has shown, at least in college film, we'll see what he does in the pros, that he can run through contact and that he can get great releases against contact. Those things matter, and those are the things that you really come preseason you'll know more. That's why you have guys that there's a ton of noise about them in training camp until a certain point. And that certain point is when the pads come out.
Oh, Gray. Sorry.
Unless it's Powell, then I'm just going to eat it up. That's all that matters to me.
Oh, right. Yeah. You're not going to live that one down. But Brian,
No,
thank you for the question. And folks, if you want questions asked, put the questions at the beginning, question marks at the beginning. And I do agree with you. I think Mike Rose right now is probably the number 4 linebacker on this roster in terms of skill. He's probably the number 5 on the depth chart because they're going to trust Jermaine Carter because he's got experience. And that's fine. But I think he's definitely making this roster.
Yeah.
Spards Lair, thank you for the super chat and the support. Appreciate it. And I like your icon, by the way. I think the top 4 wide receivers are set, in my opinion. Seeing Gordon doesn't play teams makes him the 5th or 6th spot. Also, would you say that Ross playing special teams, knowing his prior, can you see that, knowing his prior back issue? First, I agree. I think the top 4 wide receivers are set. Do you guys?
Yep.
Yeah.
In stone.
Okay. So Gordon not playing
That's
teams.
Ross number 1, based on what I
Right. Is that okay? Is that what you're getting? Okay. So you're just reading Twitter. Okay. I get you. Gordon not playing special teams, but having a few reps in the offense. Ross not having played much special teams in college, but he did do a little bit.
Yeah.
But clearly getting some reps here this week and even last Thursday, I believe it was. So what's your take? Those guys, I think, are both in the mix for 5 and 6. What do you guys think?
I'll defer to Dan the man first.
I mean, you guys have heard me talk about it. I don't think Josh Gordon's making the roster. I just don't. I don't think that the way that they've given depth at the position specifically, I think that guys, as much as everyone wants to give me crap for it, and I well deserve it, Cornell Powell is a better route runner and player. He's like a Byron Pringle. He's a better player than Josh Gordon is at this point, unless Josh Gordon has some renaissance that gives him 5-year-old, like 5 years ago legs. Like that's what it, and hand-eye coordination. You couldn't catch the ball last year. So I just don't think that he's going to be able to make this roster given the youth and the depth that they've gotten, especially because a guy in Justin Ross, who, as much as he may or may not make this roster, if he does, Josh Gordon's not making it. He's the same. He's a younger, he's a more athletic at this point in his career, I assume, given back he's healthy, can do everything that Josh Gordon was supposed to do for this team last year. So for me, I don't think that Josh Gordon's going to make it. Ross is going to be given every opportunity, considering that they're trying him out on special teams. And then it's going to come down to that gunner, that return guy that might help you in some way, shape, or form, whether that's going to be Fountain. I don't necessarily think that Powell's going to give you much in that regard, but if he could be a Byron Pringle type player, maybe. I don't know. I haven't seen him return. So it's a difficult spot to predict that sixth spot, because again, it's special teams. We know that Dave Tobe has his guys. If he finds a guy, we know that Fountain is kind of like that, in that mold right now. So if you can project him and you see Ross making it, it's set.
Yeah.
Right, because they're not going to suddenly start carrying more receivers.
Yeah.
And I mean, there are players. I mean, come on. I mean, Corey Coleman got some publicity when they signed him because he
Right.
did have a lot of talent coming out. I mean,
Exactly.
I would just say with Gordon, sure, there's some advantage from knowing the system, but he was not able to win the way that he can win at this point in his career last year.
Yeah.
And so I don't believe. I don't think he'll be hard to knock off the roster for Ross. And I think that's Ross's spot. That's where he tries to win it. The one thing I wanted to address is do you have him avoid special teams because of previous back issues? I would just note, if you don't think he can play special teams because of health, he shouldn't be on the roster.
Yeah.
I don't mean that in a mean way. I am cheering for Justin Ross to make it. I personally, I hope he plays every snap of offense and special teams and has 60 yards and 20 TDs. But if you can't play special teams, you can't really play offense either.
Right. You're talking about 6 snaps a game. I mean,
Yep.
maybe 10. Yeah. So I will say this too, one step farther for both you guys. I think Dries Fountain is Ross's best friend because he gives him the cover to show something special that isn't every day, but make those one-handed catches. Show the above average plays that he can make beyond Gordon, and Dries Fountain is the safety net that gives Dave Tobe what he needs. So I think it works. Thank you, Spards. Appreciate you. Thank you, Gooch. And yes, this week's episode of Law and Order, dun dun dun, is also presented by RGR. Welcome to the Thunderdome, we'll call that. Ross, thank you for the support. Will the defense be better at sacks or interceptions?
Interceptions. I'm very confident to say that they'll be better at interceptions this year. Not so much sacks.
Fortunately, better. I mean, you can be not good at either.
Exactly.
Better
Still
at
be better.
thing. I have a lot more confidence in the secondary because they've thrown. I like Justin Reid a lot. I really like Juan Thornhill. I think Brian Cook is going to be able to play that third safety role, play a ton of snaps pretty much out of the gate. Smart player, good athleticism, hits hard, played well in college. Really impressive tape. Cornerback, a lot more question marks. But they've got talent there. They've been able to develop guys, and they threw a ton of bodies at it. I love that. Ton of talented athletes, and Trent McDuffie, who I think will start from day one.
Yep.
Agreed.
He had to do a lot of crap in coverage at Washington. Like, he'll be able to slide in. Like, he's not going to be a dude where Spags is going to call cover 6, and he's going to be like, what? Huh? You know, I mean, I don't think I saw him make a bad pass in zone. Like, he's a smart player. But really, I mean, unless the defensive line, who knows? Maybe Cullen does some crazy stuff with like Wharton and Saunders, and we'll see.
Well, with Cullen's experience and his presence here on this roster, they should be otherworldly.
And who knows? But unless Frank Clark, at least as things stand right now, I mean, Karlaftis, I expect him to come in and be a decent rookie, maybe even a very good rookie. But even a very good rookie, you're going to have consistency issues. I'm nervous about the defensive line. So I guess, I'd go with interceptions too. I mean, I don't think they'll have more interceptions than Well,
hold on.
Now you're getting a little out of control.
Well, I mean, what if they only have 15 sacks all year? You know, Jones collects 8 because he's a tackle. Karlaftis gets, 6 or 7 because he's a rookie, and that's a decent rookie season. And what? Clark's going to suddenly become a 10-sack guy?
No, Chanel's going to have like 7.
Yeah, when they move him to edge.
Can we blitz 6 every down? I'm down. I'm so there.
Look, Rex Ryan is not walking through that door, Ryan.
Come on, man. If I put the ponytail on, I could clip it. It worked. That's fine. Thank you, Ross. We appreciate you. Thank you, Judge. Appreciate you. What's Brown's new contract look like? Just ballpark it, Seth. What do you think happens?
I think it probably ends up being about $22 million a year, give or take.
Yeah. Yep.
Like
and
4 or
people
5.
will freak out, as always, with the initial amount, but then we'll see what the guarantees are. I'm guessing it'll probably be something they can get out of very comfortably after 3 years.
Okay. So do you think it's 5 total? Dan and I both think 4.
I would say probably 5 total, just because of his age. If I were him, I would probably want to do 4 total. So that way you can hit free agency at 29-30. Because there's a big difference between 29-30 and 30-31 in terms of how teams look at you.
Thank you, Judge. Appreciate you, and thanks for the support. Scott, thank you.
Thank you,
The
Scott.
Hi Avery button is activated. I like that. Everyone say hi to Avery. Avery, glad you're here. Truth. What 6 wide receivers will make this roster? We just talked about the top 4 of them. Hardman, Juju, MVS, and Sky. Shoe-ins. Nothing's happening there, barring an injury of some kind. And then, is it Gordon? Is it Fountain? Is it Ross? Is it someone we're not seeing yet? Yes, I know Mike Sexton made a bunch of catches last practice, guys. Mike Sexton isn't making the roster. I'm just telling you. I would like to see him on the practice squad, though, just as a future reference. So I think we're all kind of that 5-6 is going to be the competition, but the top 4 are set in stone.
Yep.
Mr. Gooch, thank you. The super button is still functional, folks, and thank you, Gooch. Sorry to throw you for a loop here when you got off the plane and we throw you into litigation right away. So we'll work on that. Holly, thank you for your support as every other day. We very much appreciate it. You still have the best avatar of anybody in this chat room.
Best.
That is a picture of her and Tommy, just so you know, Seth. Is the July 15 contract deadline just for the franchise taggers for all players' contracts end in 2023? Are those who didn't make the deal then automatically free agents in 2023? As far as I understand, it is just the franchise tag. They can negotiate through the year, but most teams and most agents don't like to.
Yeah.
Players really don't like to because it's just a distraction. It takes away from them, earning their contract year, so to speak, by not letting them concentrate. So it's just the franchise tag. Gooch, thank you. This is the Chiefs channel, right? I got the plan here. Lamar, yeah, okay.
I think we already did that one.
I threw it up there before because it made me chuckle. Thank you, Gooch. And thank you, Gooch, again. And Seth, in his Raider colors, should we change the name to CITN in North Vegas? That's baby blue.
When did the Raiders wear baby blue?
Aw. So it's a George Strait song.
Gooch, what color is the ocean? Is that Raider colors too?
Which way to the gun show is what Seth said.
Oh, yeah. What I was gonna say was, do you have some tickets? Here, hang, I think I hurt myself.
Do it.
I think something popped.
Oh, never trust a lawyer. I'm just saying. What's worse, Brown repping himself or hiring Rosenhaus? Well, for the Chiefs, repping himself is much, much more desirable. Rosenhaus is a tough agent, man. I'm telling you. Oh, man.
That Mahomes deal never gets done with Rosenhaus.
No,
I agree.
no.
I agree.
He would never do that. He would never do it. Because let me just say, and we've said this before, I've heard whispers, I don't know how accurate they are, but I think they're pretty accurate, that agents around the league and the NFLPA was not super thrilled about that Mahomes deal.
No, not so much. Hey, $500 million. Can I just say that again? $500 million.
It's so much money, and you can't turn on your TV without seeing a Patrick Mahomes commercial.
Nope.
I mean, and good on him. We're not even going to get a chance to talk about his contract. We should next week because I wrote about that, by the way. You know what his contract is now, 2 years later? Market value.
Yep,
and actually
it
a
is.
little better.
Don't even start me about 50 for Russ. We'll get to that next week, folks. Or you can find it on NFL33.com. I'm just saying. David, thank you. We appreciate you very much. And we're trying to keep it friendly. Gooch said, "I'll listen, but I have to do super chat button, or so you'll read my question." Yeah, I don't get to read them all, Gooch. You have to forgive me because I flew across the country with layovers. I don't blame you for being grumpy.
You know what? Layovers stink.
I told my main employer that, hey, if I'm not flying direct, I'm not flying. And they said, hey, by the way, when we book it, you're going to go anyway. And I said, okay, well, maybe.
All right, well,
maybe I won't work for you that long. I don't know. We'll see. But Gooch, I hope that this will help you as we ease into some of the questions. Stallworth, yeah, I'm not counting on Dana or Saunders to turn in a good season. What about Sue? Do you guys think Sue has anything left in the tank that's worth bringing in?
For 300, 400 snaps, sure.
Yeah, okay.
But that's going to be at the end of the year too. I mean, he's at that stage. I wanted them to grab Akeem Hicks, and I understand his contract was up to $10 million. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure that's how my weight is potentially down to 175. You know what I mean? I don't believe a word of that.
I was 250 once. I have to ask Tyler, what does Brett Veach see in the D-line that prevents him from getting a vet DE?
His new defensive tackle coach, his new D-line coach. That's what it is. If we're being honest, they're trusting him to get the most out of this defensive line than we've seen in the last 2 years, because there is one investment made in the first-round draft pick in George Karlaftis. And the best thing we've heard about him, I'm not trying to throw shade, is his motor. Okay? Mike Dana, motor guy. 2.5, 3 sacks a year. I'm not trying to throw shade. When that's the one thing that we're hearing about your number one draft pick, we know the kind of player he is already. He's going to collapse the pocket. We're hoping that him working with Bobby Stroop, which I know that was talked about in the comments a little bit there, and him getting with Cullen as the defensive tackle coach is supposed to, or the new defensive line coach is supposed to help bring the best out of him. And I hope it does. I really hope the best for all these players. Don't take me saying that I don't necessarily like them or think that they're not great right now means that they can't be, or I don't want them to be. That's not how this works.
Ryan, why does Dan hate Mike Dana?
Aw,
I love Mike Dana.
He doesn't. He loves every Wolverine ever made.
I love him. He is one of my favorite effort guys. That's what he is. He's an effort player. But again, at the end of the day, if the one thing is effort,
it would be interesting, with the stuff that Bobby does, because he's kind of an outside the box thinker, and they definitely do a lot of things towards bend and flexibility.
Yes.
If anyone's going to get Karlaftis to get just the tiniest bit of bend, because he does not have that currently. then I think it would be Bobby. And that would be interesting because even just getting just a little bit of bend, even below average, would be a huge thing for a guy that can win in a number of other ways, the way Karlaftis can. I'm not counting on it. That's hard. Ankle flexibility. Like, can that really be taught? I'm going to tweet that at Bobby right now. Like,
it's funny because
it's difficult to develop.
Yeah, but we've seen him do different things with Mahomes. Mahomes isn't the most naturally athletic person in the world, but he has a different technique. Like, he's different.
He's always had that runaround, though. He's always had the ability to change direction.
It's Patrick Mahomes, too.
Obviously, I hate him. He's the worst player. No, but like he does different things to work because when you have limitations, you have to think outside the box. And like you said, Bobby's good at that. So there's a very good chance that maybe he thinks outside the box with Karlaftis, and you can find a way to at least get him to corner. Because if he can corner, then you add a different element to his game, and that helps everything.
Honestly, you add Ben to that successfully, he's a complete rusher. Because he defends the run.
Yeah.
He crushes the pocket.
And
he has good hand usage. He has a good first step.
He's got the toolbox to be a good pass rusher even without much bend. There are guys who have done it. Again, look at 2018 Frank Clark. Didn't have a lick of bend. I mean, he had a teeny tiny amount, but not really. He just won it a bunch of other ways. Karlaftis can do all that. That's why he won consistently in college. Because it's not like those tackles are all, I mean, he wasn't playing against saps the whole time.
Yeah.
But it's just, that would be an interesting thing to add.
Goose, thank you for this super chat. And I understand that
strays.
No, I don't understand. I'm not reading the second part right. He just said, hi, Dan, and he loved the tweet about Josh Allen. But why do you ask? Because if Cornell Powell and Juju that he threw on
so
that,
he's talking about, I loved Cornell Powell coming out. So he's talking about the good juju I gave Cornell Powell, that he's hoping that it makes Josh Allen bad. He's just throwing shade at me. And it's okay. That's okay.
Yeah,
I'm okay with it. I take it.
Do.
I miss.
Sorry.
And I will always see. This is my thing. I have guys. All right.
I have never missed on a player ever.
Ever.
Thank God. I have never in all my years. In 10 years of doing this job, I've been right every time. That's the beautiful thing about prognostications.
You know
how good I was.
One
I
day
read
I'll
that
be
as
set.
Juju with capital J's.
I know you did, but yeah. So I mean, I will just for that. We're gonna have Cornell Powell make the 5 spot. Let's go.
Oh, that's cute. Brother Rick, thank you for your support. I see the Chiefs trading at least one wide receiver to a team for a surplus D lineman. What do you say? I say it's a possibility. They have a good wide receiver group.
Yeah.
Is Josh worth anything? No one's going to give anything for Ross because he's just too much of a chance.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. He's getting a lot of hype right now, and that's great. I like that the team's hyping him up. That tells me maybe they like what they're seeing. That's great. Right. Maybe they're saying, you know what, he looks quick. And I'll tell you what, if he looks quick, he's got everything else you want. I like Justin Ross in that area. He just didn't look quick in college, but what are you going to do? But these aren't guys with trade value necessarily. They have more value with the Chiefs where they are trying to replace a on track to be first ballot Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
You've got to replace Tyreek Hill. That's not the time to be trading away dudes that can contribute.
Yeah.
Well, and I'll tell you this too. The plus side, that's a two-edged sword. And the plus side for the Chiefs is they're actually going to push guys to do things they haven't done before. I think we see a better version of MVS in this offense than we saw in Green Bay. And that's why it's hard to find.
Yeah. And MVS can play a little bit. He's got a specific skill set, but I think he's gotten a little almost underrated. People are assuming Sky Moore is going to be better than him in this offense. Now, Sky Moore's ceiling is higher, I think. But MVS, like you know, when I was going through and looking at all of the receivers and some of the things I was looking at, you know, is top end speed and acceleration. MVS has both of those things. And that's hard to find. Now, is he quick in and out of breaks? No. But, man, if a corner lets him get even, he walks away from them and fast. Yeah. And he's a big enough guy to where you just chuck the ball down the field, and he does a pretty decent job at tracking it in the air. So we'll see.
And the difference is that Andy Reid and Mahomes maximize what you're already good at.
Yeah,
they let you be the best player that you can, and that's the big thing.
Yep.
Liz, thank you. If you guys would check out the RGR store, we that always helps the channel as well. And Liz, I'm glad that you like the Reaper shirts, folks. The Reaper lives. He was playing with Josh
I was
Allen
about to say,
yesterday.
do you guys watch him? The dude is
The Reaper
back.
does I recorded it. I didn't get to see it all.
Man.
But I like the chirpy Tom Brady, and I wish the Young Bucks had taken him out. But you know what?
Man, Tom Brady left New England and became kind of likable.
Likable.
And it really bothers me.
No, he didn't.
All right, everybody. I'm going to
That's
take the opportunity to say goodnight because I have to put my daughter down for bed.
Oh,
thank you, guys. We should do this more often. This was a lot of fun. It was great.
yes.
It was. And Gooch,
Avery,
you know what?
good night. Have fun, Dan.
I've had a terrible week. You are still the man.
Thank you, guys.
Yep,
I love
take
you
it easy,
both
Dan.
a lot. I'll see you guys next time.
Appreciate you, man.
All right, buddy. We'll speed round it, but thank you, Brother Rick, and thank you, Gooch. We are rogue, and I'm glad that I hope this is helping. I'm with it. Sex. Ooh, that sounded bad. Is there a chance that we keep franchise tag on Orlando and trade him next year? I think that he will get signed to a contract. And Seth can't speak right now, evidently. 900.
Yeah, no, that
so
would
this is how you
stun
super
me with
chat.
that route.
So this is super chat. Cool. Rock on.
I think you
900.
should
Thank
test
you
it
very
about
much.
20 more times.
Just so I have to say the name. Zex.
No,
Thank you.
I mean the other guy. You should keep
okay.
checking to make sure that's how you do a super chat.
Holly, what happened to Tyreek? I haven't followed the news much today. Just that a reporter tried to push Andy on the reason he departed, and Andy kind of shut it down. So,
yep.
Nothing to see.
Yeah, I
with
think
Holly.
and
that's what
called
Andy
him
wanted.
beloved. He said like,
oh, did he?
Was beloved. We love Tyreek.
Yeah, I mean Tyreek even said today, I wanted to stay in Kansas City, just couldn't work out.
Yeah,
my market was bigger than they could afford, and that's the bottom line.
Yep.
Hey Paddock, has Avery signed yet, or is she still a free agent? I don't know.
I actually don't know.
Avery is Dan's daughter. Has she signed? Yeah, I mean she's in the pipeline. She's the developmental league for RGR. She's obviously got the camera presence. She just has to learn to speak first. Did George? I'm here for you, buddy. Jace, did you see George Karlaftis is working with Stroop? Yeah. Okay. So we did cover that. Yeah. And maximize what you got there. I think that will be a good thing for him. I like Bobby's concepts. I've only talked to him very, very quickly. I'd like to get him on the show. We'll see if we can do that. Gooch, what that doesn't explain is why EB isn't a coach and why he can't just be race.
I'll field this
agreed.
one. The short answer is we don't know. And LaShawn McCoy saying that he was annoyed doesn't tell us any more information than we already had. I mean, there are a variety of reasons. I do think all you got to do is looking statistically. It's not hard to think that race might not play a factor. And that's just the fact of looking at statistics in the NFL. Now, maybe that's not it. I think there's probably a lot of other stuff going into it too. But it's only fair to look at kind of the most obvious thing first. Now, that still doesn't explain like 3 straight years of being like the number one guy. And you kind of wonder, there's rumors that, because it does seem like people very quickly torpedo any idea that it could be anything else. And Gooch, I think that's what you're pushing back against, is this idea that that's the only possible explanation, when at the end of the day, NFL teams are pretty mercenary-like. And if they think there's a dude that's going to really help them win and a guy that they really love, they're going to hire him. And he has not been able to make a team fall in love with him in that interview room. That's a bummer. But there might be other explanations for that too.
I also think NFL owners are soft and they just can't take real talk. So an EB's real. I don't care if you like him.
And I could see him being like that in an interview room, saying something like, "That's a stupid question." And you know what? It was probably a stupid question.
Yeah, I think I would agree with him 9 times out of 10. That would be perfect. Guys, check out Back Talk Bros. That is Stevie Gooch and Aaron over on their channel as well. They started something new. That's where you can find it, and it's in the chat. Thank you for throwing that up there, Liz. I'm going to make sure I hit that. How do we feel about Pete Sweeney saying that Joshua Williams is the best player on the field today? This is your customary moment of silence, because I'm not going to comment on that. That thought is someone's thought. They're welcome to their opinion.
Yeah,
I wasn't there.
Yeah, and hey, good for Josh Williams.
Yeah,
I mean, these are air practices. Josh Williams is an excellent athlete. Excellent athlete. What is he? 6'3"?
Yeah.
He can move well. I guess if I had an opportunity to ask Pete why he feels that way, that would be great. But I'm sure Pete had a good reason for thinking that.
Okay. Sexy Accident, welcome to the memberships. Glad that you're back. I appreciate that. Let's see. We're trying to speed through these, you guys. Don't forget, yes, thank you, Lego. Always helpful. You guys are rocking it tonight.
Yeah.
Nighthawk, welcome. A lot of new members tonight. I love that. Karloftis, OLB like Suggs ever. I think they will ask him to drop from time to time. I think they will probably be not that plussed with the result that they get. So I think that probably won't last terribly long. I think he's a forward playing player. I think that's where he's best.
Yeah.
Okay. Sexy accident. Back from the deployment. Well, welcome back, man. And thanks for what you do for us. We appreciate you. Good to see you as well. And hey, plenty of new guys to talk about accident. We got plenty, man. Nighthawk. Who else is excited about Fortson back on the field and taking him, taking the baton from Kelsey? Yeah. I mean, yeah.
You know who is the biggest Jody Fortson fan in the world? No, it's not me. It's not Josh Briscoe. It's not Nate Taylor. It's Travis Kelce.
That is a big deal.
That matters to me. And that tells me, at the very least, if nothing else, Fortson has convinced Kelce that he will do anything to make it happen.
Agreed. Here, take this one. I'm going to grab our last questions.
All right. Underrated players or players not to be talked about that have a decent shot at the 53. Oh, man. See, those ones are always hard because you're always talking about, bottom end of the roster guys. The Chiefs roster this year, I kind of expect to fall fairly. I don't think we're going to see a ton of surprises. I don't think there's going to be, because really when you look at the offensive line, you see the depth there. I think you really know who the guys are going to be. I think one guy, since we talk about receivers so much, I think Fountain has a better shot than people think. He's decent. He's got decent size. He plays physical. He can win in a lot of the same ways that Josh Gordon was purported to be able to win. He's just not 6'3". He's 6'1", but 6'1" is still good size. He's built thick. Every time I've watched him play, I've said, he looks like he could do a couple things. Kind of similar to like a Byron Pringle thing, not looking like a star or anything like that. But every time I watch Pringle play, you would think, hey, he could do a little more with a little bigger role.
Okay. Yeah. Everyone knows that I like Fountain probably more than I should.
Yeah.
Scott, does Watson make it because of his special teams experience? That's a feather in his cap, but he's got to beat out Fountain that knows this system too. So it's going to be a fight. I would put him as the fourth guy in that battle for the 5 and 6 spots, but I think he is probably in fourth. Scott, thank you. How realistic that they signed Sue? 10%?
Yeah, if that. I've never even heard of any interest in the past.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't either. Gooch, thank you again. The only time that I look at the ocean is when the sun is going down, so the water gives off the red hue of the gold horizon. Chiefs Kingdom. I like it. Nicely done, Gooch. Sugary Special K. If we heard a lot of wide receiver battles and secondary spots, how many spots in the 53 do you think are set in stone?
45.
Yeah, it's pretty significant this
year. This is not an easy roster to make. And part of that is when you draft well, at least with guys that you're high on initially, and when you've got a big draft class and a lot of them are early, they're going to get a roster spot for at least 1 year. Like, that's the thing, being a guy that's taken on the 4th round on up. Really the 5th round on up. You have to blow it to not make the roster the first year. 6th and 7th round picks, it's a little more tenuous, but even then, teams don't like to cut 6th round or 7th round picks that first year. You got to blow it. Who was the corner? The 3rd rounder?
Kavari Russell, 2nd rounder. Kavari Russell, Notre Dame.
I forgot, man. That was unbelievable. Like, you have to, I don't know what happened there.
You got to screw up.
Something unusual happened there. That was like a bleep you coach, or actually like bleep you owner or something.
Yeah. How much will this team miss Tyreek? He always seemed to step up whenever Mahomes was out.
Mahomes stepped up big when Tyreek was out too, usually. He often played really well. But I'll say this, Tyreek Hill, if you go back and watch a ton of the clutch moments in the last 3 or 4 years, Tyreek Hill is in a lot of them. He's a uniquely talented player who does not shrink from big moments, who actually does. And that's a skill, playing just as well or better when everything is freaking out around you. That is a skill. And Tyreek Hill had that. In addition to being so physically talented, great receiver. They're going to miss him. How much they miss him is dependent entirely on whether or not they manage to do an above-average receiver core through the whole replacement thing, because last year they had Tyreek Hill and dudes. So let's say
this way.
Smith-Schuster is better than their number 2 last year, and MVS is better than their number 2 last year, and McCole Hardman plays as well as he did last year. And what if Sky Moore comes in and he's better than their number 2 or number 3 last year? I think they'll probably won't miss him too much. But that says something about Tyreek Hill, that you have to hit on 2 or 3 guys to not miss him too much.
Well, I'll put it this way too. They'll miss him in key big play situations.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody here is proven to be able to be that kind of clutch player.
Yeah,
but in the aggregate, in the day-to-day moving the offense in terms of yardage, production, yak, etc., they've made a good case, like you said, to raise the floor on everyone, even though your ceiling is coming down. They may have better output from the wide receiver core.
Yeah. Yep. In terms of consistency, it's going to be those big moments. I mean, like that, go back and rewatch the AFC or the divisional round. I mean, that touchdown. Yeah, Mahomes made a unbelievable throw, but literally no one else in the NFL scores that touchdown that Tyreek Hill scored. No one. And that includes Hardman, who is dang fast. No one else scores on that play. I mean, that was, I've never seen an NFL player do that. That was Reggie Bush in college stuff.
Oh, wow. There's a reference. David, thank you very much. We appreciate you. Appreciate the support. Michael Donegan, hope you're doing well. Should we see the revert to a little back towards gimmicky sweeps, etc., until the new wide receiver core is mid-range route chemistry? Not necessarily. I think they want to do a little bit more, like in terms of jet motion and stuff like that. I don't know that the pitch pass is going to come back that much any more than it would have whether Tyreek is here or not, to tell you the truth. Do you?
I don't think so. And I think when you look at the type of guys that they grabbed, they didn't really grab gimmicky guys. Smith-Schuster did a few, sideline to sideline type stuff, but that's mostly because he's such a strong runner. And as long as McCole Hardman's on the roster, they're going to do some of that with him because he's a very talented runner. But I don't see them doing more of it. I think you're going to see Hardman get those looks that Hill used to have, and you're going to see less of it overall because it used to be Hill had them and Hardman had them. Now I think Hardman's going to absorb some of what Hill used to get, and you're going to see actually a little more standard stuff because MVS and Juju, those are normal NFL receivers with niche skill sets. And that'll be interesting to see.
Yeah. My big thing is you can't double and triple 2 guys anymore.
Right.
Because they have enough weapons to hurt you. So, Spards, with AFC quarterbacks being increasingly mobile and getting the ball in 2.5 seconds, is containment more likely philosophy rather than sacks? It's not containment, it's pressure. It's moving them off their spot so that their rhythm in that 2.5 seconds is disrupted. And that is about not necessarily finishing, but crushing that pocket. If you can put a tackle in somebody's lap, it ruins what he's trying to do too. Mm-hmm. But I do think that is why they made more of a concerted effort to make investment in the secondary. Because if you're getting that push, if you have closer coverage in the first 3 seconds, then you're better off in the overall per that rep, right?
Yep. My understanding is, and I know a lot of research has been done on this lately by maybe either the PFF guys. I know Ben Baldwin's looked at it. Some of these guys who really are better crunching numbers than I am. But they've talked about the fact that coverage is more impactful. Pass rush is more consistent. Because it's hard to cover well week in, week out. And it's more scheme dependent because sometimes play designs are just real good, man.
Well, and that's why matchups are matchups.
Yep.
That's how you win those things. Oh, thank you, Night Hunter. Appreciate you. Thank you, Spars. Appreciate you. Raymond, thank you. Your eyes look way better, Dan. And Dan, hope you hear this. Thank you, Raymond. And Doug, thank you. Coming soon, Dan wearing Pal's jersey. Jaden didn't seem to be in here today, but I think Jaden can hook him up on that. Why did they put Andy on the spot with the Tyreek question? That's the big question. That there's 2 reporters in particular that I don't follow for a specific reason because I think they're there more to try to make a splash and get their names out than actually support and inform the fan base. And I
don't even know who asked this. I'll be honest.
I do. I'm not going to put it in there. I don't need to gaslight somebody, but there's a reason I don't do somebody's show consistently. So anyway, Scott, Kansas City Chiefs will stay on there until Liz gets her 200. Liz, did we get our 200? I would appreciate that. 200 thumbs up, folks. If you're new, hit that thumbs up. It helps more Chiefs Kingdom find us. Sub and hit that bell as well, because that's how you find out stuff. Longmorn, thank you for the support as always. I think in the long run, losing Tyreek helps 15 become a better quarterback. I can understand that argument. I'm not sure that it's exactly 1 for 1, but I did like, the early couple of seasons of Mahomes when it was like 9, 8, 10 receivers in a ball game got passes.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's efficient. I think that's hitting the mark.
And I do think that any big change, I think Fangio's defensive shells becoming the primary look you see in the NFL will make Mahomes a better quarterback. I think the more change you have to do and adjust to and go through, the better quarterback you have the potential to become, assuming you have the bandwidth to keep expanding there. And I think Mahomes does.
Yeah, I agree with you. Last question for you, Seth. Is this who's your sleeper that's on the roster right now?
Like sleeper to make the roster?
Yeah.
I'm gonna stick with Fontaine. I like that pick, and it makes you happy. So
I like it as well. That's awesome. And last one, Sexy. Welcome home. Thank you for what you do for us. Welcome home from deployment, folks. Give Sexy a hand. And welcome back to the memberships. We'll have more for you. Should have something for you tomorrow. You members, you're definitely getting Gooch. I just have to edit that and get that get it configured to come up tomorrow. On the member side, that's if you join and you get into the second level there. Make sure you do that. We'll be back with you next week, Seth and I, on Thursday, right, Seth? We're good schedule-wise.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Folks, I will be moving the studio eventually here in the next month. The house is sold. We're in good shape. So a lot of change coming, RGR, but we're going to have more wrinkles for you and some more stuff going on. So thank you for your patience tonight. Thanks for being with us. Thank you, Seth, for all you do, and welcome back home. And hey, folks, we'll talk to you tomorrow. Night.